Bismillah walhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us all, to be present and silent, and to not talk, to grant us tawfiq to remain quiet and still. Ameen, say Ameen. Ameen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be pleased with us as we gather together in His house, His blessed house. There is no greater or more beautiful or more serene a space that we can gather than in His house. And we thank Him, Jalla fi'ula, that He has allowed us this opportunity to sit here in safety and security and ease and comfort, having no worries, no stressors, meaning external, internal, I know maybe otherwise. But the reality is, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is constantly, by His lutf, by His subtle grace and His gentle ease, He is constantly bestowing upon us bounties upon bounties upon bounties that we truly can never sufficiently thank Him for. And so we come in a state of humility and utter indebtedness to Allah, God, for His beautiful mercy and the grace, His divine grace that He has bestowed upon us, and that He has always bestowed upon us, and that He will continue to bestow upon us. Bifadlillahi ta'ala. We are, Ya Allah, nahmaduka wa nashkuruka wa la nakfuruk. We praise You, we thank You, and we do not reject You at all, Allah. We don't reject anything that You have decreed. We don't reject anything that You have willed. We do not reject anything that comes from You, because we know, Ya Allah, with certainty that You are absolute khair. You are absolute goodness and absolute mercy and absolute gentleness and absolute ease and absolute beauty. So we thank You, Ya Allah, and we praise You, and we come to You with bowed heads, humble hearts, minds in full and utter surrender and submission to Your magnificence, hoping and praying, Ya Allah, that You accept us as Your servants, and that You allow us the grace to follow in the footsteps of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, to be amongst His true followers. For Ya Allah, we know there are many who have claimed and will continue to claim to be followers of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We ask You to allow us to be amongst His true followers, who truly commit to the path of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, to the guidance and the light, the laws, the spiritual guidance, the intellectual guidance, everything that You have sent to us through Your beloved messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We ask You to make those things beloved to our hearts, ones that we love to orient ourselves around all the time, in the day and in the night, in word, in action, in thought, in experience, in feeling. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Kareem, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Barakallahu feekum wa jazakumullah khair. Inshallah, tonight, some of you may have read the title, The Paradox of Choice, and that title really was completely just uplifted. I just lifted it from a famous TED Talk by a psychologist by the name of Barry Schwartz. So he's a professor at Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania, and his writings speak excessively about our modern society, and specifically he speaks extensively about this concept of choice. Because today, when we think about choice and we think about the freedom to choose, we take it almost as an existential truth, that there is this idea that you have and that I have, and that is the freedom to choose. And that idea is really the freedom to choose absolutely. And so today we see that this idea is morphing every single moment. So perhaps when maybe 10 years ago or 20 years ago, the boundary for choice was limited to a number of things, now that boundary is constantly being pushed. So we're talking today about the freedom to choose gender, and the freedom to choose sexuality, and the freedom to do this, and the freedom to do that. And there is no real sense of a consideration of, well, is this okay? Is it absolutely the case that I should choose whatever it is I want, however I want to do it, and there should be no limitation? So what we will find, and inshallah we'll watch the TED Talk together, and what he, I think, does meaningfully is that he at least will problematize for all of us this idea of the freedom to choose absolutely. Because he'll indicate that no, that's not quite the case. And the fact of the matter is that this idea of the unrequited choice, or the unlimited or the unrestricted choice, can be very, very problematic for us on many, many levels. And he'll touch upon some of them. But what I want you all to do is to pay close attention to what he has to say, to see what kind of catches your thought, your imagination. Really, some of the key prompts that I just want you to keep in mind is, yes, I have been constantly inundated with the idea, whether through school, college, social media, and in just social society in general, that the freedom to choose is an absolute value that must be protected absolutely. And I just want us to think, well, why? Why is that the case? At the very least, let's not pass any judgments just yet. But one of the key principles that we have in our tradition is, as I've mentioned to many of you very often, is al-hukmu ala shaykh farun an tasawwurihi, that for us to judge any given matter, we have to be able to conceive of this thing. So I'm not sure that many of us, especially as people who live in the Western world and who've grown up in this world, that we've really taken the time to question this. I'm not sure how often we've really challenged this idea or this notion. Does it need to be challenged? You know, do questions need to be asked, or do I just take it as a given? You know, this is a given and that's it, you move on. You know, are there limitations to this idea? At the very least, we have to pose these questions, discuss it. This is not a space to be aggressive, angry, judgmental. That's not the point. This is a pure intellectual exploration of a concept, of an idea that we know is really, you know, as we say in the US, it's Bible. You know, you don't touch this idea. You don't talk about it. You don't question it. Quite the contrary. You know, as a country, we fight for this, right? Right? Isn't this, you know, home of the brave and land of the free, or vice versa, or whichever way it goes? Which way does it go? Did I get it right? Land of the free, home of the brave. There we go. Right? But we're land of the free. Are there different levels of freedom? You know, is there political freedom versus maybe social freedom versus, is there philosophical freedom, spiritual freedom? What is freedom? Am I free? Can I really be absolutely free? These are all questions that I just want us to pose. So as you're watching, you know, most of us have these things, so you can take some notes if you have some pen or paper to go, but make sure that you just note, because I'm going to ask you, you know, immediately to just share some of your reflections. What are some of the essential ideas that he presented that made you think differently about this concept, that made you ask a certain type of question, that maybe triggered something in your thought or your mind, whether you're, you know, thinking about it in the context of what you're going through today, because especially if you're on a college campus, this idea of freedom and the freedom to choose is wahi. You know, it's divine revelation. And it's basically the key principle that is brought up in any conversation. You want to talk about, you know, drugs, you want to talk about gender, you want to talk about sexuality, you want to talk about politics. What is the first thing that's thrown out? The freedom to choose. Okay, why have we given it this level of primacy? Was that divinely constructed, or was that a social construction? When did this idea even start? Did this start 100 years ago? Did it start 1,000 years ago? Did it start a millennium ago? These are the types of questions that I think as a Muslim community, if we pose and we bring to the table, then we bring greater sophistication to these ideas that are taken without any type of spiritual rigor, because we're not just a community that cares about intellectual rigor. Much more importantly, we care about spiritual rigor, because we care about the state of our heart. We care about the state of our soul, because that's ultimately what we seek to be saved and preserved, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So with that, inshallah, we'll start the TED Talk, and then afterwards we'll continue, inshallah. You can turn off the lights, or whoever can turn off the lights. Omar, maybe you can turn off the lights for us.
I'm going to talk to you about some stuff that's in this book of mine that I hope will resonate with other things that you've already heard, and I'll try to make some connections myself in case you missed them. But I want to start with what I call the official dogma. The official dogma of what? The official dogma of all Western industrial societies. And the official dogma runs like this. If we are interested in maximizing the welfare of our citizens, the way to do that is to maximize individual freedom. The reason for this is both that freedom is in and of itself good, valuable, worthwhile, essential to being human, and because if people have freedom, then each of us can act on our own to do the things that will maximize our welfare, and no one has to decide on our behalf. The way to maximize freedom is to maximize choice. The more choice people have, the more freedom they have, and the more freedom they have, the more welfare they have. This, I think, is so deeply embedded in the water supply that it wouldn't occur to anyone to question it. And it's also deeply embedded in our lives. Some examples of what modern progress has made possible for us. This is my supermarket, not such a big one. I want to say just a word about salad dressing. 175 salad dressings in my supermarket. If you don't count the 10 extra virgin olive oils and 12 balsamic vinegars you could buy to make a very large number of your own salad dressings in the off chance that none of the 175 the store has on offer suits you. So this is what the supermarket is like. And then you go to the consumer electronics store to set up a stereo system, speakers, CD player, tape player, tuner, amplifier, and in this one single consumer electronics store, there are that many stereo systems. We can construct 6.5 million different stereo systems out of the components that are on offer in one store. You got to admit that's a lot of choice. In other domains, the world of communications, there was a time when I was a boy when you could get any kind of telephone service you wanted as long as it came from Ma Bell. You rented your phone, you didn't buy it. One consequence of that, by the way, is that the phone never broke. And those days are gone. We now have an almost unlimited variety of phones, especially in the world of cell phones. These are cell phones of the future. My favorite is the middle one, the MP3 player, nose hair trimmer, and creme brulee torch. And if by some chance you haven't seen that in your store yet, you can rest assured that one day soon you will. And what this does is it leads people to walk into their stores asking this question. And do you know what the answer to this question now is? The answer is no. It is not possible to buy a cell phone that doesn't do too much. So, in other aspects of life that are much more significant than buying things, the same explosion of choice is true. Healthcare. It is no longer the case in the United States that you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you what to do. Instead, you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you, well, we could do A or we could do B. A has these benefits and these risks. B has these benefits and these risks. What do you want to do? You say, Doc, what should I do? And the doc says, A has these benefits and risks, and B has these benefits and risks. What do you want to do? And you say, if you were me, Doc, what would you do? And the doc says, but I'm not you. And the result is, we call it patient autonomy, which makes it sound like a good thing, but what it really is a shifting of the burden and the responsibility for decision-making from somebody who knows something, namely the doctor, to somebody who knows nothing and is almost certainly sick and thus not in the best shape to be making decisions, namely the patient. There's enormous marketing of prescription drugs to people like you and me, which if you think about it, makes no sense at all since we can't buy them. Why do they market to us if we can't buy them? The answer is that they expect us to call our doctors the next morning and ask for our prescriptions to be changed. Something as dramatic as our identity is now become a matter of choice, as this slide is meant to indicate. We don't inherit an identity, we get to invent it, and we get to reinvent ourselves as often as we like. And that means that every day when you wake up in the morning, you have to decide what kind of person you want to be. With respect to marriage and family, there was a time when the default assumption that almost everyone had is that you got married as soon as you could, and then you started having kids as soon as you could. The only real choice was who, not when, and not what you did after. Nowadays, everything is very much up for grabs. I teach wonderfully intelligent students, and I assign 20% less work than I used to, and it's not because they're less smart, and it's not because they're less diligent, it's because they are preoccupied, asking themselves, should I get married or not? Should I get married now? Should I get married later? Should I have kids first or a career first? All of these are consuming questions, and they're going to answer these questions whether or not it means not doing all the work I assign and not getting a good grade in my courses. And indeed they should. These are important questions to answer. Work. We are blessed, as Carl was pointing out, with the technology that enables us to work every minute of every day from any place on the planet, except the Randolph Hotel. There is one corner, by the way, that I'm not going to tell anybody about where the Wi-Fi works. I'm not telling you about it because I want to use it. So what this means, this incredible freedom of choice we have with respect to work, is that we have to make a decision again and again and again about whether we should or shouldn't be working. We can go to watch our kid play soccer, and we have our cell phone on one hip, and our BlackBerry on our other hip, and our laptop presumably on our laps. And even if they're all shut off, every minute that we're watching our kid mutilate a soccer game, we are also asking ourselves, should I answer this cell phone call? Should I respond to this email? Should I draft this letter? And even if the answer to the question is no, it's certainly going to make the experience of your kid's soccer game very different than it would have been. So everywhere we look, big things and small things, material things and lifestyle things, life is a matter of choice. And the world we used to live in looked like this. That is to say, there were some choices, but not everything was a matter of choice. And the world we now live in looks like this. And the question is this good news or bad news? And the answer is yes. We all know what's good about it, so I'm going to talk about what's bad about it. All of this choice has two effects, negative effects on people. One effect, paradoxically, is that it produces paralysis rather than liberation. With so many options to choose from, people find it very difficult to choose at all. I'll give you one very dramatic example of this, a study that was done of investments in voluntary retirement plans. A colleague of mine got access to investment records from Vanguard, the gigantic mutual fund company of about 1 million employees in about 2,000 different workplaces. And what she found is that for every 10 mutual funds the employer offered, rate of participation went down 2%. You offer 50 funds, 10% fewer employees participate than if you only offer 5. Why? Because with 50 funds to choose from, it's so damn hard to decide which funds to choose that you just put it off till tomorrow, and then tomorrow, and then tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow, and of course tomorrow never comes. Understand that not only does this mean that people are going to have to eat dog food when they retire because they don't have enough money put away, it also means that making the decision is so hard that they pass up significant matching money from the employer. By not participating, they are passing up as much as $5,000 a year from the employer, who would happily match their contribution. So paralysis is a consequence of having too many choices, and I think it makes the world look like this. You really want to get the decision right if it's for all eternity, right? You don't want to pick the wrong mutual fund or even the wrong salad dressing. So that's one effect. The second effect is that even if we manage to overcome the paralysis and make a choice, we end up less satisfied with the result of the choice than we would be if we had fewer options to choose from. And there are several reasons for this. One of them is that with a lot of different salad dressings to choose from, if you buy one and it's not perfect, and you know what salad dressing is, it's easy to imagine that you could have made a different choice that would have been better. And what happens is this imagined alternative induces you to regret the decision you made, and this regret subtracts from the satisfaction you get out of the decision you made, even if it was a good decision. The more options there are, the easier it is to regret anything at all that is disappointing about the option that you chose. Second, what economists call opportunity costs. Dan Gilbert made a big point this morning of talking about how much the way in which we value things depends on what we compare them to. Well, when there are lots of alternatives to consider, it is easy to imagine the attractive features of alternatives that you reject that make you less satisfied with the alternative that you've chosen. Here's an example. For those of you who aren't New Yorkers, I apologize. But here's what you're supposed to be thinking. Here's this couple on the Hamptons, very expensive real estate, gorgeous beach, beautiful day. They have it all to themselves. What could be better? Well, damn it, this guy is thinking it's August. Everybody in my Manhattan neighborhood is away. I could be parking right in front of my building. And he spends 2 weeks nagged by the idea that he is missing the opportunity day after day to have a great parking space. Opportunity costs subtract from the satisfaction we get out of what we choose, even when what we choose is terrific. And the more options there are to consider, the more attractive features of these options are going to be reflected by us as opportunity costs. It's another example. Now this cartoon makes a lot of points. It makes points about living in the moment as well, and probably about doing things slowly. But one point it makes is that whenever you're choosing one thing, you're choosing not to do other things, and those other things may have lots of attractive features. It's going to make what you're doing less attractive. Third, escalation of expectations. This hit me when I went to replace my jeans. I wear jeans almost all the time, and there was a time when jeans came in one flavor, and you bought them, and they fit like crap, and they were incredibly uncomfortable, and if you wore them long enough and washed them enough times, they started to feel okay. So I went to replace my jeans after years and years of wearing these old ones, and I said, I want a pair of jeans, here's my size, and the shopkeeper said, do you want slim fit, easy fit, relaxed fit? Do you want button fly or zipper fly? You want stone washed or acid washed? Do you want them distressed? Do you want boot cut? Do you want tapered? Blah, 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 on and on. He went, my jaw dropped, and after I recovered, I said, I want the kind that used to be the only kind. He had no idea what that was. So I spent an hour trying on all these damn jeans, and I walked out of the store, truth, with the best fitting jeans I had ever had. I did better. All this choice made it possible for me to do better. But I felt worse. Why? I wrote a whole book to try to explain this to myself. The reason is, the reason I felt worse is that with all of these options available, my expectations about how good a pair of jeans should be went up. I had I had no particular expectations when they only came in one flavor. When they came in 100 flavors, damn it, one of them should have been perfect. And what I got was good, but it wasn't perfect. And so I compared what I got to what I expected, and what I got was disappointing in comparison to what I expected. Adding options to people's lives can't help but increase the expectations people have about how good those options will be. And what that's going to produce is less satisfaction with results even when they're good results. Nobody in the world of marketing knows this. Because if they did, you wouldn't all know what this was about. The truth is more like this. The reason that everything was better back when everything was worse is that when everything was worse, it was actually possible for people to have experiences that were a pleasant surprise. Nowadays, the world we live in, we affluent, industrialized citizens, with perfection, the expectation, the best you can ever hope for is that stuff is as good as you expect it to be. You will never be pleasantly surprised because your expectations, my expectations, have gone through the roof. The secret to happiness, this is what you all came for. The secret to happiness is low expectations. I want to say, just a little autobiographical moment, that I actually am married to a wife, and she's really quite wonderful. I couldn't have done better. I didn't settle. But settling isn't always such a bad thing. Finally, one consequence of buying a bad-fitting pair of jeans when there is only one kind to buy is that when you are dissatisfied and you ask why, who's responsible? The answer is clear. The world is responsible. What could you do? When there are hundreds of different styles of jeans available, and you buy one that is disappointing, and you ask why, who's responsible? It is equally clear that the answer to the question is you. You could have done better. With 100 different kinds of jeans on display, there is no excuse for failure. And so when people make decisions, and even though the results of the decisions are good, they feel disappointed about them, they blame themselves. Clinical depression has exploded in the industrial world in the last generation. I believe a significant, not the only, but a significant contributor to this explosion of depression and also suicide is that people have experiences that are disappointing because their standards are so high, and then when they have to explain these experiences to themselves, they think they're at fault. And so the net result is that we do better in general, objectively, and we feel worse. So, let me remind you, this is the official dogma, the one that we all take to be true, and it's all false. It's not true. There's no question that some choice is better than none, but it doesn't follow from that more choice is better than some choice. There's some magical amount, I don't know what it is. I'm pretty confident that we have long since passed the point where options improve our welfare. Now, as a policy matter, I'm almost done. As a policy matter, the thing to think about is this. What enables all of this choice in industrial societies is material affluence. There are lots of places in the world, and we have heard about several of them, where their problem is not that they have too much choice, their problem is that they have too little. So the stuff I'm talking about is the peculiar problem of modern, affluent Western societies. And what is so frustrating and infuriating is this. Steve Levitt talked to you yesterday about how these expensive and difficult to install child seats don't help. It's a waste of money. What I'm telling you is that these expensive, complicated choices, it's not simply that they don't help. They actually hurt. They actually make us worse off. If some of what enables people in our societies to make all of the choices we make were shifted to societies in which people have too few options, not only would those people's lives be improved, but ours would be improved also. This is what economists call a Pareto improving move. Income redistribution will make everyone better off, not just poor people, because of how all this excess choice places. So, to conclude, you're supposed to read this cartoon and, being a sophisticated person, say, what does this fish know? You know, nothing is possible in this fishbowl. Impoverished imagination, a myopic view of the world, and that's the way I read it at first. The more I thought about it, however, the more I came to the view that this fish knows something. Because the truth of the matter is that if you shatter the fishbowl so that everything is possible, you don't have freedom, you have paralysis. If you shatter this fishbowl so that everything is possible, you decrease satisfaction. You increase paralysis and you decrease satisfaction. Everybody needs a fishbowl. This one is almost certainly too limited, perhaps even for the fish, certainly for us. But the absence of some metaphorical fishbowl is a recipe for misery and, I suspect, disaster. Thank you very much.
Bismillah. What did you think? So anyone, so obviously, you know, he specifically kind of focused on this question of pleasure, satisfaction, welfare, because he's a psychologist and he's trying to really get to, as I'm certain he, as a therapist, meets with people all the time, and people have many, many more things, but are increasingly displeased, unhappy, depressed, anxious, worried, and the list goes on. And this is a reality that I certainly can attest to, as being an imam and dealing with thousands of community members. This is the reality. And so I think there is a lot to be said there. There are also a lot of other considerations, but I don't want to kind of pollute the airwaves right now. I do want, however, for you to share your thoughts, reflections, what stuck out to you, what kind of questions did you begin to consider for yourself, any reflections you have. So we'll do that for some time until I'll then close with some final thoughts, inshallah. So who would like to start us off? Yes? Let's get you the microphone, inshallah, so we can hear what you have to say.
So in the end of the video, the fishbowl represents a limit to freedom and opportunities. Choices. That's what he was just summarized up.
I'm sorry.
So in the end of the video, there was a cartoon of a fishbowl.
Yes.
In the end, summarize the entire video. Basically, the fishbowl represents a limit to freedom and choice and opportunities. There's a limit to everything.
Yeah, I think what he's saying is that everyone needs a fishbowl. That's why I think he was indicating.
Yeah.
Okay. Any brothers? We'll go one to one, inshallah. There has to be some thoughts or reflections. You didn't just process all of that and before I start calling on people. Sisters are still want to speak, so we'll go back to the sisters. Yes, go ahead, sister.
What came to mind to me when he used the fishbowl as an example of people needing, boundaries and guidance in their lives, I thought right away about religion and how religion gives people those boundaries and guidelines in their life and provides them with comfort and, security and knowledge, So people who are not maybe following a religion or they don't have a set of values that they believe in are kind of, there's just so many choices and it could be causing, depression, anxiety, and all those type of things.
So I think the sister is reflecting on the fact that, the great evident value of this idea of religion and religious practice and commitment to Islam is that it gives you clear, constructed boundaries that gives you a sense of comfort. In many ways, we're like children. When you see a lot of our young kids, a lot of times the reason they're lashing out the way they're lashing out is because they're looking for structure, they're looking for routine, they're looking for boundaries, and we just keep it kind of open-ended, whether they're watching TV or we're giving them endless options of things to choose from. The net is just a tantrum, screaming. How many times you see a kid leaving Toys R Us happy? That's when it existed. Toys R Us is Allah yarhamhum. But but Toys R Us, everyone goes into Toys R Us, all these kids walk around, and all they think about is what? Everything they didn't get. Right? Everything they didn't get. But when you limit, you simplify, and you really celebrate the one precious thing that you have, you can give them a rock, a stick, and they will be in utter joy. So there is experientially what I'm trying to indicate here. Obviously, we didn't get there's much more complexity here to think about. We haven't gotten there yet. But the idea is one of the wisdoms that I think we should be able to utilize is the fact that Allah gives us experiences that gives us insight into human nature, into who we are. Because very often when we're thinking about big existential questions of identity and elsewhere, we tend to neglect the basic human experiences that we all share. That we can all realize, hold on, yes, I don't find much pleasure now. Back in the day, it would be that one show that everyone knew they were going to watch at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. or whatever it was. Everyone was around the TV, everyone was excited and so on and so forth. Now it's 1,000 channels and you're going through 1,000 channels. You don't, you don't end up watching anything. You watch everything and you get no pleasure out of it. Actually, you're miserable by the time you're turning the TV off. Correct? So isn't that something experiential that we can identify and say, hold on, there's something that's not right here? So yes. Anyway, I just wanted to share some thoughts on that. Go ahead. Yes, please. Brothers, jump in before I start calling on you. Yes, brother.
Hello, Mike. I just want to share something. When my kids, they were young. Oh, right now. Decided to go outside. Start working. Say something.
Yes, that's a practical example I think everyone experiences. You know, let's go out to eat. Okay, let's eat here, let's eat there. Let's do the things. At the end of the day, we stay home, eat sandwiches, right? Just eat sandwiches from the get-go, you'll be happy. Yes. What else? There's some. Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to share that thinking back to raising my in TV. So when we first got to this country, there's the choices, of course, weren't the same. You didn't have to have cable to have basic channels. I don't think you could do that anymore.
Yeah.
And anyway, so there we always watched. I think I watched like little DVDs for half an hour for my daughter. The point is, she never saw commercials. She didn't know what commercials were until we went to another place, the time, and she's stuck with commercials. Like, oh, you know, these are the. It becomes a choices. It's more stressful. I saw that in my own daughter. So when people ask, oh, what can I get your daughter? Because most kids want something specific. But my daughter wasn't raised that way. So she said, whatever you give her, she was happy with because she didn't know that there was 3 different types of dolls. You just got one, you know. But it's, you know, to me, it's for children in terms of the limit, trying to limit them. A lot of people like in my own family would say, oh, you're you know, you're being too strict because she can't watch this. I'm like, but she's smiling and your daughter's screaming because, you know. So I personally see the difference of how, you know, it's all perspective, right?
Yeah.
Some people think it's limitation, some people think it's freedom. And so it goes back to that, the freedom that she was able to watch whatever she wanted, or the fact that there's no TV in every single bedroom, you know, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Which I think that when I was young, having my dad here in the other side saying he was so strict, the TV would go with him sometimes. Okay, and so there was there was only that one channel that we always watch, and you know, and feeling oppressed by that.
Yeah.
Back to the freedom and oppression type of, you know, metaphor. I felt oppressed growing up, thinking he was not allowing me to see what everybody was allowed, you know. But the wisdom in that, of course, happens later. But
And I mean, you know, I said this in the khutbah last Friday, which is something experiential that we can all agree to is this. No one objectively would say that it's a good thing to eat 100 hot dogs, right? I have the freedom to do that. I can do that right now. I can go and buy 100 hot dogs. No one can stop me, and I can eat them. But would anyone say that is a good thing? No, you're going to objectively say that that extent of an option is just not a good thing. You should not do that because we look at it from a clear, just medical benefit. Medically speaking, it is harmful to do that to yourself. So yes, you may have the freedom to do that, but you shouldn't do that, right? So we identify at the very least that there is this concept of boundaries, limitations that are of use, they're beneficial. There's a concept of no, of don't transgress beyond this point, because if you do so, it will not be good for you. So we can see that in medical terms, whether it comes to food consumption, behavior, actions. You know, it's not a smart thing to jump down, you know, 10 flight of stairs, one shot, right? That's not a smart thing. That's not a good thing. You're free to do that, but you're gonna potentially break your leg or whatever the case may be. So this is where I think it's important for us to take that and to extrapolate, you know, how this may come into consideration when thinking about now the greater questions, if you will, especially of our present moment, because I know every single one of us today are familiar with the conversations that exist around, you know, like I said, drug consumption or gender and sexuality and these types of realities that now are being thrust into the space of freedom of choice, absolutely. And this is not a space for limitations. And even a question or consideration of limitations immediately translates into what? You are a bigot, you're a zealot, you are this, you are that. Well, am I? I mean, to simply question this. Now, setting aside for a moment the fact that there are people, human beings, who are going through genuine struggles and challenges and identity crises, and they're struggling to make sense of who they are and what's going on. I'm not belittling the fact that people are going through genuine agony. But we're having a conversation on a objective, intellectual level to say, perhaps, just perhaps, it is a good thing when I say to myself, no, right? No, I should not do this. Even if I want to do it, I should not do this. And we gave multiple examples as it stands. So I want to take this further, but I don't want to dominate, so inshallah I'm going to go ahead, Sajid.
So while he was speaking, I kind of had visual image, like, I guess, kind of like imagery of what he was saying. And in my mind, I kind of compared the difference between having limits and no limits is basically a path versus a pasture, or like just some sort of like a stream versus the wide open ocean. Like if you're stranded in the middle of the ocean, you don't know which way to go. It's just like vast, or in the middle of a pasture, it's just been in every direction is available.
Yeah.
You don't know. There's no direction. It doesn't lead anywhere. But a path is defined, and there are limits to it, and it leads somewhere. So.
Now, subhanAllah, on that note, there's a beautiful hadith Qudsi where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, عبدي خلقتك لعبادتي فلا تلعب وقسمت لك رزقك فلا تتعب. My servant, I have created you to worship me, basically to live within these outlined boundaries, so don't play around too much. Here is where I want you to basically play. I want you to stay in these lanes, so don't play around too much. وَقَسَمْتُ لَكَ رِزْقَكَ, and I have apportioned for you what you will take and gain in this dunya, right? I have portioned your sustenance. قَسَمْتُ لَكَ رِزْقَكَ فَلَا تَتْعَبْ, so don't agonize over things, because you're going to get what I've already decreed for you. And then he says, إِنْ أَنْتَ رَضِيتْ بِمَا قَسَمْتُهُ لَكَ, if you are content with what I have decreed for you, أَرَحْتُ بَدَنَكَ وَعَقْلَكَ وَكُنْتَ عِنْدِي مَحْمُودًا, if you accept this decree and you are content with it, then I will bring relief to your mind, your body, and you will be praised by me. However, if you do not accept and you are not content, then I will bring anguish to your heart and your mind and your body, and you will be blameworthy with me. And this is where Sajah, the shahid to what you're saying is, he says, وَبِعِزَّتِي وَجَلَالِي لَأُصَلِّطَنَّ عَلَيْكَ الدُّنْيَا تَرْقُدُ فِيهَا رَقْدَ الْوُحُوشِ فِي الْفَلَى. He says, if you're not going to live by this rubric, here are the boundaries, here is what you should do, here is the halal, here is the haram, so don't play around too much. I'm giving you this, so take it and be content. If you don't embrace this paradigm, then what you will ultimately be is, Allah says, He will unleash the dunya on you. And you will run in the dunya like a wild beast in the open field. And subhanallah, if we just look at our social media practices, we have nowhere where we're actually going when we pick up the phone. Right? Rarely it's just like, okay, I'll go up. Sometimes you find yourself, you go through like a YouTube rabbit hole and you end up watching lizards in Papua New Guinea, I don't know, and they're like, how did I get from, I was doing some research on, evolution, I end up like lizard. I mean, we end up in these internet holes, and that's really the reality. And the net result of it, whether it's your YouTube excursions, your internet excursions, your Facebook, just endless, there's no net benefit to it. Quite the contrary, there's net agony. I'm not comfortable at the end of all that. Right? So the beauty of the wisdom of a commitment to Allah is precisely this. They are the boundaries. تِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ. These are the boundaries assigned by Allah. فَلَا تَعْتَدُوهَا. Don't transgress them. right? Because what I have set out for you is precisely what you will need. Now, the reason that's so liberating is because when we start to dabble in the endless choices, we realize that it's arbitrary. It's absolutely arbitrary. So you'll say, for example, Muslims or Christians and Jews will say, well, the limit is man, woman. And then you'll have others who say, well, the limit should be man, woman, 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 man, man, etc. And then 10 years later, the limit can be further and further and further and further. And there's no real indication of the essential value here. It's just basically arbitrary permutations of possibilities of how human beings can interact, for example, in that space of intimacy, right? Where is the clear indication of why this is the absolutely virtuous path, right? Because clearly we are identifying multiple experiential examples that limitlessness is not inherently a praiseworthy thing, okay? Once again, we still haven't passed judgments. We're just problematizing the paradigm. That's what we're trying to do here. So, is there a strong case to be made for Allah, for the one who has created you and I, who knows precisely what we are about, what we are capable of, what we can and what we can't do. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. He doesn't burden and He doesn't put a responsibility upon us more than we can handle. So perhaps the consideration should look very different. Perhaps the standard operating procedure, as he says, the original dogma, should not be freedom of choice is absolutely good, but perhaps the official dogma is what is the right choice to make? What are the right choices to be made? If you've been sick, may Allah grant all of those, our brothers and sisters who are ill, grant them relief. And you have a very complex disease or whatever the case may be, what do you end up doing? You end up asking every single person that you can about what is the best choice, for example, for a doctor. And then you'll go to that doctor, get one opinion, and then what you'll do is you'll do what? You'll start to ask, it's just a practical process of what? I want the best possible opinion based on expertise. Because I realize that I myself am drastically, remarkably limited in my ability to define what is good. I don't inherently have that ability. I'm struggling, right? But clearly there are those out there who have that ability to indicate to me, and that's what he was saying. We've transferred it from the doctor to the patient. No, the doctor objectively is the one who should say, listen, you do this. That's why in historical societies, until today, if you go to Morocco and stuff like that, in North Africa, the hakim, the doctor is called a hakim, right? The wise person, the wise one, because they are the one who knows what is good for me. But today it's like, you get these advertisements, side effects include, depression, nausea, suicidal thoughts, blah, 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 blah. Tell your doctor about whatever, I don't know. Something with a CIA at the end. There's always CIA, or, it's a conspiracy by the American government. Anyway, I'm joking. Did you get the joke? No? For Pisha? Yes, let's go ahead. I'll stop talking. Go ahead. Choice, yeah.
Brothers and sisters, paradox mean.
Yes.
Paradox is any premises that people. I mean, the most famous paradox is what they call the liar paradox. The liar say, I'm lying.
Yeah.
Is he lying? If you,
Telling truth or lying, yeah.
so on and so on. But what he's trying to say, that the more choices we have, it's a choice.
Wow.
That's the paradox.
That's the paradox,
It's
yeah.
an old thing, more is less.
Yeah.
Or as we say in Arabic, إذا زاد الشيء عن حده قلب إلى ضده.
No.
Now, this situation creates paralysis. That is why. I mean, you have so many choices, you end up not making a choice. Paralysis leads to depression. Depression is a state of paralysis. That is exactly in Islam, of course,
No.
Because a lie and Ash'ariyya kind of split over that. But in Islam, my opinion, Ash'ariyyas were right. Vision to make choices, but we possess it, but it's not ours. See, so what is it trying to say? That if we limit the choices, make choices, will not be in a state of paralysis, and we will not be depressed.
Yeah.
Depression stands, it's in more than one verse. Those who follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لا خوف عليهم
ولا هم
ولا
يحزنون.
هم يحزنون. So, kind of living by God's will prevent you the chances
Yeah.
rest. I mean, this is
No.
so it's an issue of more stress.
Yeah. So-
And that leads to paralysis, and paralysis leads to
Barakallahu feek. Very good contribution. There's a brother in the back there. We'll come back to it. The brother in the red shirt. Barakallahu feek. Also, you can just introduce your names because I'm seeing a lot of new faces, and I wanna, I'm 99% sure I'm not gonna remember the name, but at least it's out there. Then it'll come back to me at some point. Go ahead. Your name what?
Dominique.
Dominic. Okay, mashallah.
Theology. But so in the theology class we were talking about they had multiple accounts. Marriage, different, all the different books. And parable where he's talking about choice. Theology gives multiple different accounts for stories as well as the Torah. And in this, if one is looking for answers and ultimately not fully satisfied, responses to a question, you never get the right answer. There's one question, you have two different answers. How could one be right over the other? Whereas the Quran is precise, thus giving us Muslims. Because it says, in the straightness of the Quran, in the straightness of the Quran, we can find the answers to all our problems. Sorry. Surah Al-Kahf, praise be to Allah who hath sent to his servant the book, allowed no crookedness. He hath made it straight and clear in order that he may warn from him and that he may give glad tidings. In the parable of the genes, looking for the perfect pair of genes, and there was a genes that said fulfill all of anyone's needs, then you can never miss the point.
Yeah. Jazakumullah khair. Barakallahu feek. Any? Yes. Yeah. Go ahead. Back to your voice for now. I'll repeat. And now I can't hear you. So here, there's a working microphone here.
I didn't want to make it. Simple track. Well, one of the examples I want to something in terms of imagine seeing expectations are much, much, much bigger for other people than what to offer someone. So it just as A through Z. But if you don't match A through Y, and in reality,
Jazakallah khair. I mean, your first comment, I absolutely agree. There's always a consideration for those who have clinical depression, and there's a genuine chemical imbalance. That is a reality that, you know, there's no contradiction between that and Islamic theology. I think it's more just a general reflection on the rampant states of depression, anxiety that are indicative of there's something way beyond those who are clinically, depressed. The second point you're mentioning, I think, is an extremely important point, and he indicated in that funny caricature when he said, instead of I do, you'll do, right? You'll do, Dr. Ali is getting a laugh out of this. But you'll do, I didn't look at it as a negative thing. I didn't look at it and say that's a bad thing. I believe that and as someone who is dealing with our communities every single day, we have such exaggerated senses of self, such false and exaggerated expectations. The entire idea of marriage and romance, as we are processing it as a society today, I think is remarkably flawed. And I think it's at the root of why many people are not happy in their marriages. And I think it's at the root of why people are not moving forward on marriages. Because we've developed these set of expectations that are, out of this world. They're just not realistic. They're far more indicative of a fairy tale that we've been consuming through media for many, many, many decades, right? And we can't belittle that fact. So the case is this, and I think this marriage question is indicative of much of what we've been saying. At the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who knows you and who knows me, who knows us very well, He said to men, listen, you can marry a woman for this, and those reasons. Find the woman of good deen and move forward. And if a man comes to you and you accept their deen and their khuluq, then move forward. Very simple, practical metrics to consider, rather than this exaggerated idea of a whole host of, a list of what I want in terms of looks, size, shape, color, income, social circles, blah, blah, blah. I've so many people say, I'm looking for a marriage. Okay, send me your whatever. And it's like 35,000 bullet points. Okay, you've lost it. You're way beyond any realm of reason. And who has convinced you that this was a good thing? Right? See, what's interesting is at this level, we can all appreciate that that's just crazy. And many of us have seen some of those lists. We've seen those lists of, well, what are you looking for? I'm looking for someone that doesn't really exist, right? I'm looking for someone that I've been imagining in my mind. It's a figment of my imagination. And then, as he said, at the end of the day, 9 out of 10 times you're going to be displeased, right? You're gonna have a sandwich at the end of the day, like this brother's saying. Or we're gonna eat here. We'll go to the steakhouse. Go to whatever. This is gonna have sandwiches at the end of the day. You'll do is a virtue. If we can just realize that because I don't like the word I settled. We have to be careful about language, because language is constructive, as social theorists say. When you say, you know what, I married someone who had good khuluq and good deen, however, they didn't have the 30,000 things that I wanted on the list, so I settled. No, you actually made an objectively good decision, right? It was a sensible, good decision. You didn't settle for anything. That fairy tale that you had in your mind, that's all your personal construction. Don't project that onto the world. Right? And this is something very important to consider, which is, are we really free? And this is, I think, some of what the brother was indicating, is that are we really free people? Because at the end of the day, there's something that's shaping my mind. There's something that's shaping my subjective nature. The way I'm inclined, there's something at play, right? What we try to regularly do is attach, a virtue to it. Like, this is, the way I feel is objectively a good thing. I have virtue, I have principled feelings. You're making an argument for yourself that's paradoxical, because you can't make that claim for yourself. If you make that claim for yourself and I make that claim for myself, then we're just going to walk around. Everyone is a mini ilah, a mini God that knows absolutely, objectively what is best. And I'm just going to take that and we're going to try to, it's like bumper cars. We're just going to bump around each other and bang. But what Allah creates for us is real social harmony. Real social harmony. He knows the nature of men. He knows the nature of women. He knows the nature of every human being and what they inherently need, what their spiritual needs are, what their intellectual needs are, what their physical needs are. Allah knows it all. And He knows it with a knowledge that is so nuanced and discreet and distinct that no human being can possibly process. So when we know that about Allah, then we surrender to His decree lovingly, willingly, happily, because we say, Ya Allah, al-hasanu ma hasanahu Allah, wal-qabihu ma qabbahahu Allah. Right? Al-hasan is that which Allah has made. Al-good is that which Allah has made good, and ugly and bad is that which Allah has made bad. But if I take my own standards and I project it into every space, food, drink, relationships, marriage, decisions, careers, we come up into this space of, okay, what do I want to be? And that's a very modern industrial question. That's not a question that exists in the world today, except in the small percentage of the world. What do I want to be when I grow up? What do you want to be? I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a garbage man. I want to be a nurse. I want to be, right? And then what happens? I know countless people, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. What are you doing? I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm not sure who I am. I don't know who I am. Why don't you know who you are? I'm still trying to figure that out right now, right? Take that well into my 30s. I'm still trying to figure out who I am. Why is it that is an epidemic in our society? You know why? Because we have taken ourselves, our nafs, our ego, as our guide. So, however I am inclined, I'm going to try this out for a little bit and try that out for a little bit, and I'm not happy here, I'm not happy there. I stay in a job for 2-3 years, I become disillusioned. Maybe I should shift careers. You know what? I really want to become a business owner. This idea of working in finance, it wasn't for me. I want to go buy a bit. And you just in this, whereas the previous generation was very simple. You look at the likes of my father, came from Egypt in 65, and it's like, I have a job. I don't care what it is. It's a job. Alhamdulillah, rizq. And just, flying through the world. So happy. No, not a care in sight except that he has a good, simple job. Nothing more than that. Now because we have endless options, we can really do, quote unquote, whatever we want. We're not doing anything. And we're dissatisfied and unhappy and miserable and many, many other things. So there is here, what I'm trying to inch towards is something very simple. Trying to instigate in our hearts and minds a really strong case for Allah. A really strong case for Allah. Because if I realize that I'm not able to really do this on my own, I can't. I don't know how to do this on my own. I don't know how to make sense of this life on my own. I don't know how to make the right decisions. What we spoke about today in the khutbah with these young boys, the young men of the cave. What was the dua that they made? رَبَّنَا آتِنَا مِن لَدُنْكَ رَحْمَةً وَهَيِّئْ لَنَا مِنْ أَمْرِنَا رَشَدًا. Ya Allah, هَيِّئْ لَنَا مِنْ أَمْرِنَا رَشَدًا is to say, Ya Allah, I want you to orient and direct me in my life, in my affairs, to the best possible state in which I will be guided. Because at this point, I can't figure it out. I just can't. And the beautiful thing is, you were never meant to figure it out on your own. You were never meant to figure it out on your own, because when you're left to yourself, that is self-destruction. Even the Prophet ﷺ, what does Allah tell him in Surah Al-Duha? What does He tell him? وَوَضَعْنَا عَنْكَ وِزْرَكَ. أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ. Sorry, أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ وَوَضَعْنَا عَنْكَ وِزْرَكَ الَّذِي أَنْقَضَ ظَهْرَكَ. Did we not expand your chest, Ya Muhammad? And أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ وَوَضَعْنَا عَنْكَ وِزْرَكَ. And we relieved you of harm. الَّذِي أَنْقَضَ ظَهْرَكَ. That which actually saved your metaphorical back. You had this burden that you were carrying, and the burden was very simple. The Prophet ﷺ was seeking. He wanted guidance. He wanted understanding. He was socially very happy. He was very well to do socially, but what he wanted was understanding. He wanted clarity. He wanted to make sense of the world. And when Allah granted him revelation, then Allah says, this is what we've done for you. We've relieved you of your burden. The burden was one that was here and here. So when you come to Islam, you're coming to a space of relief. You're coming to a space of clarity. لِيُخْرِجَ النَّاسِ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. To exit people from the darkness of confusion to the clarity of light. Now you see, now you really see, and you get it, and this dunya makes sense, and I don't have to stress about what's happening because it's in Allah's hands. I am not the one who's going to define, your destiny is in your hands. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's in Allah's hands. Your only hope is to surrender to Him. That is your only hope. Okay, you went and you put on some elbow grease and you became a millionaire, right? And then what? Number one, you didn't become a millionaire. Allah made you become a millionaire and allowed you to become one. Yes, you utilized means in the dunya that Allah has set, but ultimately it was from Allah. But then what? What did you accomplish then? These are critical questions. So yes, now I may go and I may make a very strong social argument to allow myself to indulge in every single desire I have. Every single inclination I have. Gender, sexual, drugs, whatever the case is. Yes, I can go and I can lobby politically and I can come with a critical mass of people who have the same ideas I have, and then I lobby to say, listen, you have to allow us to do this. Why? Because we want to do it. And then what? What did I really accomplish? Who said that when it's legislated for me to do X, who said that that would lead to welfare? Who said that that's going to lead to happiness and well-being? There is no correlation between the two things. These are all just subjective notions. This is the same thing as me saying that if you just let me eat 100 hot dogs, I'm going to be happy. Right? I may get some instantaneous pleasure, but I'm going to feel sick to my stomach, miserable. I'm going to be diabetic, and I'm going to have heart conditions and whatever if I do that all the time. So yeah, I may have been able to choose what I wanted to do, quote unquote, but the fact of the matter is, it didn't lead to anywhere objectively that was good. Because at the end of the day, all I did was worship myself. And, in closing, what is very important to consider is this. Is what type of self, I know you want to comment, we'll get to you right now. What type of self is actually making the choice? Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali identifies the different types of nufus, the different types of nafs. You may be a bahimi nafs, a subu'i nafs, a shaytani nafs. What type of nafs am I that's actually making the decision? Because, if I have a subu'i nafs, which is like a dogged self, for example, like a hyena or a wild dog. A hyena or a wild dog, an unrestricted nafs, is one that is very happy when it kills and it pillages, right? And destroys. Because that's what a hyena does. It likes to tear apart, rip apart, attack. And then, and they find joy in that. Yeah, you may find a sense of temporal joy in being a tyrant. There are people who are like that. They like to be bullies. They like to be aggressive. It feeds their subu'i nafs. I may be a bahimi nafs, meaning that my entire self is animated by a beast-like characteristic, meaning to graze, eat, drink, engage in relations, and the list goes on, sleep and so on. And if that's who I am, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indicates that there are people who live in this dunya that are not just like the animal, بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلْ, they are less than the animals and the beasts, then the fact of the matter is the choice that's being made is being made by the self that is actually not good. If I am a dogged self, or am I a behemoth self, and I'm making decisions, I may be making decisions that are only feeding the worst part of who I am. Right? That's why I want to elevate my nafs to a malaiki nafs, an angelic one. An angelic one is one that only sees beauty. And the reason it becomes angelic is because it has transferred its entire self into the space of divine revelation. Allah, prophets, messengers, scripture. I've transferred my entire intellectual, spiritual heart, my entire spiritual apparatus, and I've transferred it there, so I elevate into the malaiki space. And that's a very different decision that's being made. Because you know the malaiki space? It's one of sacrifice, one of discipline, one of self-control, one of rida, contentment, pleasure. Not I settled for my husband or my wife. No, that I married, alhamdulillah, someone that had good characteristics as described by Allah and His Messenger, and I am so happy that Allah has granted me this rizq from Allah. Because at the end of the day, women and men were pretty much all the same. Like there's no woman like, I got the one, you know, I got her. No, she doesn't exist, by the way. And you got the one guy. No, there's not that. There's none of that. That fairy tale of your soulmate, you're going to be walking through the supermarket, and then you're going to pass by the fruits, and then you're both going to be looking for an apple, and then your hands both reach for that same apple, and then the souls have connected. No, that's fantasy, and that's meaningless, and it does not exist, and it's harmful. Wallahi, it's harmful, and it's painful, and it puts people into loneliness in a very, very, very ugly way. Whereas if we were much more practical about this, especially the space of marriage, we were much more practical. All I want is just a good person in front of me. That's all I want. A good, sensible person, cares about Allah. I'm not looking for Shaykh al-Islam. I'm just looking for a good person who cares about basic good values. And alhamdulillah, I will be so content. That's a malaiki nafs. But a nafsani orientation is going to look for what? I want the bells and whistles. I want fireworks. You know? I want it all. I want the whole, you know, kit and caboodle. I want it all. I want, just show me everything. No, that doesn't, you will not find any pleasure in that reality. Because all I'm being led by is my nafs. And so, what is important is to ask yourself, well, I may be making a lot of choices, but who's actually making these choices? Is it a good nafs or a bad nafs? Is it an elevated nafs or an indulgent nafs? By the way, and I know you want to say something, I'll get to you right now. Throughout human history, desire, this idea of desire has always been a blameworthy thing. Desire was never considered to be positive. Yes, you're someone who really follows your desire. No, historically, Eastern, Western philosophy, Christian theology, Jewish theology, desire was blameworthy. Because everyone identified there's a lower self and a higher self. At the very least, this demarcation existed. There's the lower self, which is the stomach and the quote-unquote private part, and then the higher self, which is the heart and the mind. And all civilizations were always directing, how do you enter into the space of negotiating the higher self and not living in the space of the lower self? Today we've completely flipped that on its head. We are praising desire in a way that is such an abomination to humanity and to the history of this world. We are saying that desire is objectively good, and you should follow your desires all the time, and you should have no limitations on your desire, and you should do what you seek to do whenever you want to do it. That is not a virtue. At least that is the claim that we would make, okay? We're going to just put it that way. The claim that I would make is that that's not absolute virtue. That is not a good dogma to maintain. At the very least, as a society, we should challenge it. We should question it. We should problematize it. And we've shown it from food to genes to marriage to the medical field. At every level, we've been able to problematize unrestricted choice. So perhaps we can now begin to make a stronger argument for this in the social sphere on many, many levels. Right? Because, let me just, before I go to the sister, Inna Dina indallahi al-Islam. The pathway to exist in this world meaningfully is Islam. That's the claim that we make. That's our claim, by the way, okay? That is our claim. That the best way, the most truthful way, the way that is absolutely committed to a divine orientation, revelation that is come in the form of the Quran, that has been unaltered to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the communication from the quote-unquote heavens and earth to us in this world, preserved, unaltered, is Inna Dina indallahi al-Islam. And then when you do that, when you follow those boundaries, when you follow the boundaries of halal and haram, then you find resonance, you find ease, you find tranquility, you find comfort, you find clarity, you find understanding, you find all of those innate spiritual, intellectual qualities that every human being is striving to have. Inshallah. So, last two comments and then we'll close. Yes, sister? I can't. Get her the microphone, please.
I got what you were saying. No, they're not. To some degree.
I mean, I think this is a very big question. The question of predetermination, the question of free will. It is a big question, and it's going to be difficult to be processed in 5 minutes or 3 minutes now. But I will say this. Let me just answer your question with a few things that I want you to think about. Number one, experientially, we all know that we do have the ability to make choices. That we can do things. I can choose right now to take this and throw it and harm you. I can choose to take this and put it in the garbage. I can do something with this, and experientially I realize that I have this seeming free motion and will to do these realities. So just experientially we can identify that there is accountability, right? I would be deceiving myself if I took these experiences that I know. I can either choose to say something very beautiful and nice and polite and merciful, or I can say to something that is very aggressive and harmful. I have that experientially, I know that. So I don't have to go through any major mental gymnastics to say there is accountability, right? Because any conscious being will realize, I actually did choose to do this, right? I did actually move in that direction. However, with that said, understand this, that you as a being and I as a being, we are very small and insignificant. And the real problem that many of us have is we have an absolutely exaggerated sense of self. We are not even a speck on the spectrum of human existence, on existence as it is. And then that's just the created world. When you think about Allah, when you think about Allah, then we're not even statistically significant. So that is to indicate that, we're not that big of a deal. So let's just relax our minds a little bit. Because we sit here and we think like our choices and our decisions, if I don't get into this school, then the world's going to come to an end. No. You don't become a doctor, it doesn't matter. become something else. You don't pass this exam, you're very fine. Figure something else out. Who cares? If you don't even go to school altogether, I mean, the point is that your life, existence, happiness, reality is not predicated upon, what exactly do I have going on in my life. A lot of us are willing to disbelieve in Allah because we don't have things in our life fulfilled. I didn't get the child that I wanted. The net result of that is disbelief in God. God afflicted my child with a disease at a young age. Disbelieve in God. Why? Because I've basically effectively said, I am Allah, God is just playing a supporting role to my life. And when He doesn't do what I want to do, what I wanted to get done, then He's defunct, right? Then He's not, this great God. He's not this merciful God. All I've done is just exaggerated my reality. So, I do have a choice, and the space of choice that Allah has given me is to surrender to Him, right? Because you know what? Effectively, everything in your existence, everything, as this brother said, is by the will of Allah. Everything is by the will of Allah. But experientially we can identify a space of that we have choice. But the overwhelming majority of your existence, you have no choice. Where you're born, how you're born, what your nationality is, whatever. Endless realities where you have zero choice. So the way in which you process free will more meaningfully, in my opinion, is to realize that Allah is the one whose will matters. Because He is truly free. He has absolute choice. He has absolute freedom. All of us are contingent beings who are very, very much limited in our capacity, insignificant in what we choose or what we don't choose. So I think that's hopefully just points you into the right direction, inshallah. Last comment and we'll close. Alaikum salam. MashaAllah. May Allah bless you. Did once, mashallah. MashaAllah. Never again watch the infomercial. Barakallahu feek.
What I want to say, Shaykh,
Yes, we have to wrap up because Brother Ayub, he needs to make adhan, and if he doesn't make adhan on time, things start falling apart. Yalla, Bismillah.
listen in that Western world.
Yes,
Don't know how to
yes. Alhamdulillah. I think we can say we don't know because we are a part of this entire existence, and I think we'll close on that, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to be a people of alhamdulillah and a people of qana'ah. People of alhamdulillah, people who praise and thank of Allah, and people who are content by the decree and the will of Allah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all, increase His guidance. I hope inshallah this was useful. I hope you continue to think about these ideas and these considerations. Barakallahu feekum wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.